Hello, everyone, and welcome to the season finale of Line Change, the NHL betting podcast from the Action Network. My name is Michael Lieboff, and joining me to bring this 2023-2024 NHL season to a wrap are Tim Kalinowski and Nick Martin. Together today, the three of us are going to break down some NHL draft bets we like. The first round is Friday evening, 7 p.m. Eastern Time at the Sphere in Las Vegas, Nevada. And then we'll go through that, give out some bets we like there. And then we'll go into some futures that maybe we like or teams that we're going to keep an eye on for next NHL season. And then you won't hear from us for a few months. And we will miss you dearly. But before we get to that, we will do the draft first. I think this is an awesome draft to bet because of everyone's talking about, we don't know the prospects that are going to go second or third, like after Macklin Celebrini. We're not even going to get into, the first overall pick. And from there, it's kind of a crapshoot on the direction the draft can go in terms of the prospects. But I think more critically for bettors out there is that it's the how the teams profile that are picking 2, 3, 4, and 5, because it's the Blackhawks, the Ducks, the Blue Jackets, and the Canadiens. Those teams are all kind of further along in their rebuilds than what we saw in these spots last year when it was teams like the Blackhawks who were tearing everything down still, the Sharks, the Ducks, etc. Like, these teams are now a step further, so they don't really have concrete needs. Like, it's a little bit more. There's more I think they can take more risks, go after the guys they think are the best player available. So I think that there's much more of a chance this thing can go off the rails than normally, and that makes for really good betting. So like I said, we won't get into the first overall pick. Macklin Celebrini is just like essentially an off the board favorite. But number 2 overall pick, Artem, and I'm sorry about the names, I'm going to do my best here. Artem Levshunov, a Belarusian defenseman who was playing at Michigan State University. He's minus 300. So he's the odds-on favorite here. Then it's Ivan Demidov, who seems to be the consensus second best pick in the draft, best prospect in the draft, I should say. And this pick belongs to the Blackhawks, I should also note. He's followed a huge jump after Demidov as a second favorite. It goes to Kaden Lindstrom at 25-1. Anton Silyev, another defenseman, he's 30-1. Sam Dickinson, 60-1. And then a bunch of other players. I do have a long shot I like here, Nick, but let's talk about how you're going to play both this pick and the next one, because the Demidov factor is kind of like the Michkov situation last year, where he's the wrinkle in all of this.
That's a big time tease, Lieboff, by the way. Got to say, great job. That's a pro tease.
Yeah, not bad. That's how this will be this is the NHL draft, baby. It's like millions of eyeballs, millions of bettors in on this with us.
Yeah, so like you said, it's really interesting to get into this same situation 1 year later. I think more so perhaps this year than last, Demidov's the second best player in this draft. And Chicago, I think, has a tough debate here. There's a lot going on. We're hearing they want to take a defender. It's also been pretty reported. I saw Scott Powers reported that the Hawks are between Demidov and Levshunov. So I feel like it sounds pretty clear it's going to be one of those two. It sounds like the Demidov meeting in Florida went really well. He was bigger than a lot of the scouts thought, and his attitude seemed really good. It sounds quite likely he'll probably come over after this year. His agent, Dan Milstein, has a proven track record of getting these guys over. So to me, it's just becoming a question of, like, are we going to see history repeat itself a year later? Because I think there's going to be a lot of teams kicking themselves in 5 months when Michkov's tearing it up. And some of the guys, most of the guys that were picked in front of him aren't even in the league yet. So I think it's interesting to consider that this looks like a pretty one-to-one comparison. And I think you take the best player available. And it's interesting to hear that the Hawks are pretty keen to take a defender. Same with the Ducks, because I think the Hawks in specific, you could argue they need another star forward as much as they need another defender. Like, it'd be nice to have a guy who I guess you're seeing is kind of the franchise D-man. But Alex Vlasic was unreal this year. Kevin Korchinski looks really good. So who's to say that they don't need just another star forward almost exactly as much. So it's going to be interesting to see which way they go. I think right now it sounds close enough that you could take somewhat of a shot with Demidov to go second to Chicago at plus 210. I think we could see that shorten leading up to it. It feels like they are legitimately still weighing their options. And then the one that I think is interesting is Demidov to go third at plus 550. And part of the reason why I think it's interesting is we saw last year, even on draft day, Leo Carlsson was a huge underdog to go to the Ducks. The odds makers were not expecting that. Pat Verbeek completely caught them off guard. So to me, it feels like a thing where, yeah, it's a bit of a guessing game. Feels like odds makers must have somewhat of a tell that Silyev is a guy the Ducks really like. But it feels to me with the way that Demidov's stock is rising, it feels like some of the concerns surrounding him are kind of resolving themselves, that plus 550 is a pretty good number. So my first play is I'm just going to split a unit on those two bets and basically just look for him to go second or third and see if teams learn from last year, because I think it's a really comparable situation.
So Demidov to go second and Demidov to go third, hoping to win one of them.
Look for one of them. Looking for him to go second or third. I think it's hopefully going to prove to be a solid approach because, yeah, I think he deserves to go there, and it sounds like kind of everything's trending positively.
Yeah, sorry, Leboff. It's tough because a lot of with the way we would naturally want to get at Demidov would be to bet under in his, selection spot, but that's not being offered. A lot of unfortunately, a shocker, the NHL draft is not a big betting night, so there's not a lot of options out there in this market. So I think that's how you're trying to get at that. If anyone's a little confused, but I think on top of that, the thing I've noticed here, right, is like I haven't watched Demidov film. This is about betting. So this is about weeding out the difference between what scouts are saying, what mock drafts are saying, what the smoke around teams is. Is it just, fodder as we lead up to the draft to zig, then zag? So that is where the real betting, touch comes in here. And you don't need to know when, again, we're handicapping what other people are going to do, not necessarily what we think. And I think that as I dove into this, the first thing I noticed was Demidov being, pretty consensus as the second best prospect on the board. And then you read everyone's mock draft and they have him sliding. So much like the Michkov situation, right? And you're trying to figure out, is this a result of Chicago and Anaheim telling writers and the media certain things to go the other way? So I think that's the biggest story outside of Celebrini, is the fact that he is indeed pretty much consensus second prospect, but no one has a lot of these mock drafts have him not going second nor third, which could mean a lot of things.
So my strategy here, I will be playing Demidov to go third overall. I will not be playing him to go second, because I'm looking to extract as much pain out of this process to send off the NHL season on a bang. I actually am going to have a little flutter on Zane Parekh at 150-1 to go second overall. If Chicago is taking a defenseman, I think the decision is coming down to Levshinov, Ziv Buyem, Anton Silyev, and Zane Parekh, who seems to be rising up a lot of boards. And there's a few, I hate to say it like this, but let's call them progressive draft modelers slash experts who have Zane Parekh as the best defenseman in the pool. I think Chicago's front office leans in that direction more. And when I say leans in that direction, I mean like they're a little bit more forward thinking with Kyle Davidson in charge. So I'm going to go for it. But part of it is because I'm betting on Levshinov to tumble. So I'm just trying to see if I can actually hit a couple of really big odds, big prices on Levshinov actually falling a bit. So I want to bet against him going second in a couple different ways, and one of them is going to be with Zane Parekh at 150-1. There might be a better number out there. It's a little harder for me to see in New York, just like all the odds for the draft. So I have to kind of do my best to put them together. But it looks like 150-1 is the best price. It's not going to win, But if they are hell bent on taking a defenseman, perhaps this team goes a little in a different direction. We've seen it a couple years in a row now where a player who was like with Shane Wright got passed on first, and then he tumbled all the way down to fourth or fifth. We saw it with last year with Fantilli going behind Carlson, and then Michkov going all the way down to 7. So a lot of times when one team kind of makes a decision not to go with a consensus like blue chipper who everyone thinks is going like second or third, that player will tend to go a couple more spots down the line. So just keep that in mind. So that's my first play. Is I like Zane Parekh to go at number 2. He's 150 to 1. So obviously not a bet you should expect to win. Let's jump into the number 3 pick. We've already talked a little bit about it here. I think this is my favorite bet on the entire of the bunch, though, is betting Demidov to go here at better than 5 to 1. If Chicago doesn't pick him, as Nick was saying, like, I think you can use that same logic for the Ducks, right? Like, they do have Anton Saliev as a near even money favorite to go number 3. And then it's Lev Shanov at number 2 at plus 260. Beckett Saneke as at 5 to 1, roughly the same price as Demidov, and Caden Lindstrom at 12 to 1. But the Ducks they're just well set up all over the place. Like, they got a lot of high end forwards, and they also have some great high end defensemen, young players like Olin Zellweger's up. I know that they traded Jamie Drysdale to get Cutter Gauthier, so people are thinking, maybe they'll want to bring in another forward. But I think they'll want to bring in a defenseman rather to replace Drysdale. But I think there's also rumors that they're trying to trade Trevor Zegras, so they might need to inject more talent. And as we've said already, like, this is the consensus second best player in the draft. Like, I think 80% of these rankers and experts say that Demidov is the number 2 prospect behind Celebrini. And if he's still there, the Ducks can take him. And now you're looking at a forward group with Carlson, McTavish, Demidov, and that's great. He's not a center, so it's not like he's becoming redundant with those 2 guys. So I like him here in this spot much more than I think it's my favorite bet on the board, Nick. I think, you talked about it a little bit, but I think this is where if one team passes on him, and the other thing is the Michkov situation, right? Like this week he's signed with, or he's made his intentions clear that he's coming over to play with the Flyers. So that Russian factor is really not a Russian factor anymore. It's all the Americans everyone's worried about drafted. I think all of that adds up to people being much happier to take on the risk with a player like him. So I think he goes second or third, and I'm going to take a shot on the 5 plus 550.
Yeah, I fully agree. And like the last thing too, yeah, like you said with the D, same thing. You can argue, and again, you have to consider the way they're evaluating it. But with Zellweger and Mintyukov, I'm looking at their roster and thinking, how do they not need a forward just as much? If you're really just banking on Carlson and Gauthier both being incredible, which they'll both probably be very good, and McTavish, but I feel like they're just as imbalanced, kind of all over the place. So again, just feels like if they're going to look at it and say he's the best player on the board. And I don't hate, like, Carlson was still really safe, I think. Like, if anything, maybe you can even make the case that he was safer than Fantilli, but they did, clearly have their own evaluation. And like we said, odds makers were way off even day of. So hopefully that they'll be way off again. And yeah, I think you're getting a number to hope for that.
I mean,
Tim, anything here?
I came in here trying to figure out how you guys would go about the Demidov situation. So that's, I learned from that. Again, it's just so head scratching to see. I have like a million tabs of mock drafts side by side with consensus rankings. And it's just, again, a little head scratching with Demidov being pretty consensus number 2. And he's, plus odds and 1, 2, 3, I guess, on nearing 4 too, right?
Yep. Okay, so this is where the second leg of my betting against Lev Shanov comes into play here, the 4th overall pick. This pick belongs to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Caden Lindstrom is a minus 185 favorite. Is he 6'5" center? He's a massive.
Yes.
He's a rig. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a big dude. Medicine Hat Tiger.
With
He's minus
back
180.
history of back problems.
Yeah, he's got some injury issues, and then so it's him as minus odds on minus 185 favorite to go to Columbus. And then it's Demidov at 3-1, Beckett, Sanicki, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing these names. As Tim
I think
said,
it's
like we're not.
Seneca.
This is Seneca,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, Beckett, Seneca. We're not a prospect podcast. We're a betting podcast. We're doing our best to handicap. There's millions of other podcasts you can listen to if you're looking for just like a straight mock draft. If you're looking for that, you've come to the wrong place. But if you're looking for someone to bet Artem Levshinov at 40-1 to go fourth overall, you've come to the right place. Because I really like this bet too. Like, let's say that Demidov goes second overall to the Blackhawks. The Ducks and the odds makers are right with the Ducks and Saliev. Like, they're kind of just enamored with this is the guy that they're going for. There's a chance that they bypass Levshinov too, who isn't. He's like a consensus top 5 pick, but there are a lot of people who are skeptical that he should be drafted in the top 5. You look at like a big board. I'm looking at the Sound of Hockey big board. They compiled every ranker out there basically, and if you look at Levshinov, there are a lot of people who have him second or third, but there's a smattering, like more than 2 or 3, like a good amount of people who have him ranked outside their top 8, including some people who are really well regarded. Some have him as high as 11 or 13. So there's a chance like he does fall. Maybe the Ducks just don't believe in him. And I think that if he does go, then that's where we see the Blue Jackets, just scoop him up because he was the favorite to go second overall. So I think at 40-1, I'm betting on Levshinov to get bypassed a couple times, but not fall all that far and end up with Columbus, who have a bunch of they're not a team that I think is going to be drafting based on need or anything at all. So I like this one quite a bit too, Nick.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I think from what I can gather, I agree with him potentially dropping because it feels like a lot of teams in the NHL look at this backwards sometimes because they love the fact that he's almost a lock to be a solid defensive defenseman, and he has pretty solid puck skill. With that said, clearly there's a black and white case that Zeev Buium has more puck skill and more upside. And I feel like teams don't consider the risk of passing on guys like that just to get a guy who's going to be a top 4 body almost guaranteed. So I'm kind of seeing it the same way. I like Zeev in both those picks. I think Buium looks like an absolute stud. I feel like a lot of what he does is going to be really hard to replace. I think you could see him end up being a Quinn Hughes comparable. So I like him in those picks. Again, you're guessing on what teams will do, but it does seem kind of surprising to me how much Levshinov is locked into the top couple picks here. I feel like there's arguments being made he's not even the best defender in the draft. So given the numbers you're getting, I think those are quite strong. It's going to come down a lot, I think, to where Demidov drops too. I think the Habs will absolutely never pass on him this year. I feel like after the Michkov situation last year, if he drops to 5, he is 100% going 5. But I think if he's not there, it's fairly open. And same thing for the pick you said before. Whether you want to go with Buium or Perrick, I think they're probably on the table. Who knows what Columbus is thinking this season, given what's going on over there. But I think those are worthy long shots and ways to try to target a bit of a slip up here.
Yeah, so everyone says the same thing about this draft, right? Defenseman. And, I've seen mock drafts that as high as 6-7 defensemen going in the top 10. But the order is, of where you rank those defensemen, that is totally up for debate. So I was hoping to get more clarity on how to actually bet into that. So I think that this exercise is useful in that it's so different than the other drafts that we handicap or here at Action Network and the other sports. It's totally different. Especially this draft, I think, is unique.
Yeah, and like I always say, keep your ear to the ground because there is situations where beat writers have basically said who's getting drafted, and I think from what I've tracked, it's actually been a fairly reasonable strategy to just try to put a little stock in it. Don't go crazy, but I think there are times where it'll be one of the guys says, the Oilers are really high on Broberg here. I can't see them passing on Broberg here, and then they take him, and the odds were like 4-1. So there are examples like that. If you keep your head out. And that's the other thing that kind of sucks is some of the more interesting top 10 guys, their odds aren't even out yet.
Yep.
I think, like we said, Iginla is one of the ones that seemingly could go all over the place here. And I think it's going to be, which I mean, I guess probably tells us we maybe don't want to bet on that, but it feels like it'd be interesting to see what the odds were and try to piece that together.
And he's another reason why I think I like betting against like the consensus mock drafts, which are going Celebrini, Levshinov, because there's 2 or 3 guys, Lindstrom too. Caden Lindstrom's another guy who there are some folks who think that he could go as high as 3rd overall, and then there's others because of the injury issues that think he can go, in the teens. So I think all of this is adding up to trying to pick your own path where, if it's either like the Demidov goes 2nd overall path or the Levshinov goes 2nd overall path, and then building off of that, or like me, I think it's going to be just kind of fall to pieces for a couple players, which are, Levshinov being the one I'm going against. I think, like I said, I think him at 4 is really good. And I also don't mind, like, as Nick said, if you wanted to split it and go with someone like Zeev Buyum at 30-1, go 4 overall. Let's go to the number 5 overall pick. This is usually where the books are cutting off the overall pick markets. This belongs to Montreal. As Nick said, they were the team that did pass on Michkov and will probably rue that decision. But they might have a chance to make amends according to the bookmakers. The most likely scenarios they do with Demidov as the favorite, a lukewarm favorite at that. He's plus 160. Caden Lindstrom is 2-1. Beckett Seneke is 3-1. Zeev Buyum is 12-1. Silyav is 13-1. And then Berkeley Catton, who is another guy, once again, who has some real like support behind him and his skill set, and people do think he's another guy that has the potential to be the off the board pick in the top 5. He's sitting there at 20-1. I've also seen a couple of scouting services really high on Sam Dickinson. I believe McKean's Hockey had him as their number 2 overall pick. They're an outlier there, but just another that's another reason why I feel like there's very little agreement. Like last year, there was the agreement that Bedard is clearly the number 1, and then it's Fantilli and Carlson are the clear number 2 and 3, and the order is however you want to put it together. In this situation, there's just, after Macklin Celebrini, there's just no clear consensus, and I think that's why I'm really excited to kind of take on some long shots. I like Buyum here. You could get him as high as 14-1 to go 5 overall. I also don't mind, once again, Zane Parik at 50-1, because if he is still out there and Demidov is gone, I think that you could see the Canadians. I know that they do have a lot of kind of high skill defensemen coming up in their system, but I still think that this is a team that would want to take on some exciting talent as they continue this rebuild. So Buyum and Zane Parik here for me, Nick, at some big numbers. So 50 on Parik and 14 on Buyum.
Yeah, I like Buyum here. I think if you're going to piece together, you believe in the chances that Demidov could be gone. I think he's a solid option. Wouldn't be shocked to see them go with Lindstrom, but again, we'll see. I think his profile is so debatable because one thing that a lot of people I think always assume translates is size and power. But the thing is, the way that he plays, you could argue once he starts playing against men, he's not going to produce like that, right? Whereas like if you're a guy who operates with little space, sees the ice, can make plays the way some of these other talents can, you could argue that's actually what's more likely to still be there in the pro game than just bullying your way through what is now grown men that are significantly better at defending. So we'll see how they evaluate it. I feel like I'm a little low on him, but I think you're right with this here, especially if we're going to put belief in the idea that Demidov won't be there, which hopefully will be the case.
Yeah, I'm pro Demidov not being here at 5. And then you look at someone like Lindstrom, who, yeah, you're right, Nick, he's big, and they went with size at that Slavkovsky pick not too long ago. I worry about Lindstrom in that they can't afford like the back injury. Like they can't afford to, I guess, whiff at center again, or like be barren at the middle of the ice again. So that to me is tricky. I wish we could get Iginla odds on 5 here. I would have loved to get a long one on Iginla, but he's not listed where I'm looking. So I think that Buyum's a better look at that. I think there's a chance that, again, Demidov's not there, and Lindstrom to me is not a slam dunk for Montreal's situation.
Okay. I'm just going to quickly run down what I have because, the conversation is a little winding. And that way you can know what we're going into the draft with at this time. Like I said, I like Zane Parik as a 150-1 long shot at number 2. I like Demidov. My favorite bet of the bunch is Demidov to go number 3 overall at plus 550. Just behind that one, though, is I like Artem Levshinov at 40-1 to go 4th overall. And then at number 5, I've got a couple of punts on some prices. Zeev Buyum, 14-1, and then Zane Parik again at 50-1 to go number 5 to Montreal or whoever trades up for that spot. So those are the ones I'm going with here. Nick, do you want to just run down what you have for our dear listeners?
Yep. Yeah, so I'm going to go with Demidov. I'm going to split a unit on him to go 2nd at plus 210 is out there. And I'm going to put the other half on him to go 3rd at plus 550. So just looking to win some if he goes there. And then I like Buyum at 25-1 to go 4. And I think 16 is the best. 16-1 is the best number out there to go 5th. And then I also like him to go under 7.5.
That's where I was going with that was my that was my first bet I wrote down. Yeah, it was under Buyum 7.5. I think it's minus 170 is the best number out there. He is a guy that is, a lot of these articles, if you just sift through the draft, have started with like Buyum biggest riser. And I think what he has done, what he did at Denver is a lot of people are taking notice. Obviously, offensively, they say that his defensive game developed as well. And again, with largely a crapshoot with where these defensemen are going to go, I think he's about as good of a look for the next kind of Quinn Hughes, like you were saying, Nick. And I think that teams are going to bite on that and be forced to, say, we can't let this guy go by us.
Okay, so are there any other over-unders you like? We kind of dived into it there. So you like Buyum under 7.5, minus 170. I think the Caden Lindstrom conversation will be a good one if you're like us and don't think he's a sure thing to go to Columbus at number 4. You can get over 4.5 at plus 130. I think that's probably an interesting bet. Nick, anything else you like over-unders for this 2024 draft?
That's it. I think you said it. Like, it just comes down to, I think that you're getting that plus 130. I think there's even plus 135s out there. It feels like it should be slightly shorter than that to me. So yeah, I'm with you on that one.
That would be that would have been my best bet is that Lidstrom over 4.5, because it was to me a way to get at the Demidov conversation and him going in that top 4 and not falling. So yeah, I think that's where I'm going to land on that. I wish we had more of these over unders. We don't have enough of them.
Yeah. And I think it actually is worth mentioning if Tidge, it's Tidge Agilna, right? That's how you say his first name?
Tidge.
Tidge, T-I-J. Jerome Agilna's son. If you start to see his odds pop, I think that he's also a worthy long shot. If you can get him at like in the double digits for 4 or 5, I think he's interesting. A lot of folks seem to think there's a couple teams that are willing to take him high up, and there's also the situation where the Flames maybe catch wind that a team like the Blue Jackets want to take him or something like that, and something crazy happens. Rarely happens in the draft, at the NHL draft, seeing teams like move in and out of the top 5, but you never know. Okay, I think that's it for the draft. We can now look ahead to 2024, 2025. talk about a couple of teams maybe we'll have our eye on. As I think I said this on the last episode, but when Nick and I did this episode at this time last year, there was all this talk about the Columbus Blue Jackets, which was funny because Nick and I in like sidebar conversations were like, this Blue Jackets team could be sneaky good if like things kind of break their way. And then they traded for Ivan Provorov and Damon Severson, and their numbers shortened, and it shouldn't have, and it shortened to a place where it's crazy. And both of us immediately were like, we're completely out on the Blue Jackets now because of where the conversation was going. But that's by the by. Let's look at the odds to win the Stanley Cup. I'm not going to read through all 32 teams, but the Florida Panthers are the favorites at 9-1. Carolina and Colorado behind them, right behind them, plus 950 each. The Stars are 10-1. Oilers are also 10-1. Golden Knights 11. The Devils 13. Rangers 13. Maple Leafs 14. Kings 18. Canucks 19. The Lightning also there at 19. Winnipeg Jets are 21-1. Right behind them are the Bruins at 23-1. Nashville Predators are sitting at 31-1. The Minnesota Wild are right there as well. Ottawa Senators 32-1. The New York Islanders are 42-1, and so are the St. Louis Blues. Penguins at 43, Flyers 55, Sabres 55, Red Wings 55. And if you guys want to throw out any other long shots, we can. Nick, your Capitals are sitting 170-1. The Utah Hockey Club's at 100-1. So any thoughts here, Nick, right off the jump? Any team that jumps out, good or bad, price too high, price too low, as we head into the draft and then free agency?
Yeah, I mean, the first one that I'm going to touch on is just because they've been everyone's pick, and I don't disagree with it, but it's been almost to a T, everyone I'm seeing is picking them next year is the Oilers, and I would not lock that in right now at all. We saw this year how hard it is to get much shorter than 9-1 during the season, even, like, I feel Tim got the Panthers at 20-1 in December when it was pretty clear they were still going to be really good. So I would really not lock in the Oilers. We just saw that McDavid needs surgery. Draisaitl's dinged up. They're coming in off a short summer. They had a horrible start last year and saw that it didn't really hurt them that badly. So I think that's the one team at the top that I wouldn't want to play. The team at the very top that I think is really, really likely to be exceptional again is the Stars. I think it's going to be very hard for them to fall off very much. All their big guns are there. Stankoven could be better. Bork could be better. Harley could be better. So I think there's a lot to like about Dallas. Do I think you need to lock in 10-1 this far out? Probably not, which is, I think, the case for a lot of them. The other one, to sound like a broken record, but it seems like the Sens are well on their way to being a trendy pick again, with the Allmark pickup, which could solve, like, this could be the year that they're finally good. On paper, the upside's higher than a lot of the teams in that range. And then the other one, there'll probably be a team we'll probably end up with in the Jack Adams race again in the regular season points table total market. But I think Utah is going to be better than people think. Again, I still believe in what's left of the Coyotes / Utah roster. It sounds like they're going to, try pretty hard to transition out of being a cellar dweller. And I think what they have there already is pretty good. So I think they're closer to, a team that I think is going to enter the year. Like, they could be one that you want to lock in now because they could enter the year 40-1. So they're kind of the one large, long shot. And, it sounds like ownership wants to go in that direction. And I also think there's something to be said for the fact that they're going to be run like an NHL team this year where, they're not staying at second-rate hotels that are adding, travel to their schedule. They're getting proper catering. They're getting all these things. They're getting more video coaching. I do think that's going to add up to slightly better results. Maybe they get kind of a positive thing going in the inaugural year. So I think they have the talent to be, or I shouldn't say the talent. I think they have the picks and the prospects to be aggressive this summer if they want to. They have so many guys on board. And I think if they want to transition to being competitive, they can do that. So no, I don't really think they'll win the cup, but I think there's a pretty good shot that they surprise, get into the playoffs, and you're happy to have a 101 ticket in your pocket when they're, entering the playoffs as a team that actually looks pretty good. So I wouldn't be surprised at all to see them be one of the teams that has the biggest shift from now until October. So yeah, I think Utah is one to keep your eye on.
Yeah, that would be for me getting ahead of what we expect is like some fireworks this summer. And it would be quite disappointing to lock in that 100-1 and that their move is like, I don't know, like a Nick Ritchie, something like, like that. That's that would be a damper on things. So yeah, I think they also could get kind of that, what you were saying, Nick, the expansion team, not that they actually are, but that expansion team bump kind of feeling of new place, new city, a lot of energy just kind of injected into that team from what has been. To me, New Jersey just that shift is just too short for me. There's still too many question marks until we see it on the ice, and I think that is totally a team that could fall under the Florida umbrella of, like, they're popping at a 20-1 in December, and we still think that they're a good team. I think that my problem, if I was forced to bet one right now, it would be Vegas at 16-1. I think that I think that we can all agree that their roster got better after the trade deadline. And I think that they just need more time to play together and to be healthy and start a season from scratch that didn't end with playing 50 games in the spring, right? I think that's like the best thing that could happen to this team, is having a full season ahead of them. And we know that how they play on home ice, and I wouldn't be shocked if they were in the running for the President's Trophy a month or two into the season, and we were saying, oh, that line's gone or whatever. So I think if I had to bet one, Vegas has some potential for me.
Love it. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I was just going to say, the only thing I would add to that is it feels like some people have lost some stock on Vegas because they lost a first-round series in 7
Right.
games by 1 goal to a really good team. And I think that's probably not fair. I think that was just not a first-round level matchup at all.
I'm with Nick on Utah. I think that number is going to come down throughout the summer. We're obviously going to be betting Andre Trigny to win the Jack Adams as well, so get ready for that. It worked out really well for us last year. So that's enough. Like, if that number does move, you miss it, you can just go for that. A couple of comments on other teams. I think that are like Tim, I'm with you on the Devils. I think this number is just a little short. Like, I think that they should probably. Frankly, I think a lot of these numbers are, but it's just a product of the odds board in general looking like another Kentucky Derby season, right? The favorite is 9-1. The Florida Panthers are 9-1 at FanDuel, which is what I'm looking at right now. So that's just going to create a pretty big bunch. There's 16 teams between 9-1 and 20-1. So I think that there's a chance, like, you can basically make a comment on, you don't have to be that good to be a that tier B contender or tier C playoff team with the way it looks right now. I think that's why we might see some momentum behind teams like Ottawa and Buffalo, like we always do. The only other team I have a little bit of interest in at these numbers is Seattle at 80-1. I think that they are the division's tough, but I think a bounce back from them could be in the cards. I think that they're just much better than what they showed. So there's that, and the Canucks number I think is just way too short for me at 19. That was the other one that stuck out to me. So okay.
Yeah, I really agree with you there. And I think the Devils thing too is just like another good conversation, that number's clearly been adjusted for the moves that have been made. And right. Yeah, right with you there that looks short. The day that they made the moves they made, they were 22-1. So yeah, if you got that, well, it was still there, you're happy. But now, obviously, I think you've kind of got past the point of having
which value. I've been saying that number, that future number before the Markstrom trade should have already either did or should have had baked in that they were getting a goalie, because it was pretty obvious they were getting a goalie. So like it was like a reaction to the reaction that was already, in my opinion, built in. Like they were getting a goalie, guys, right?
Exactly. Okay. That'll do it for us this episode and this season. Hopefully we go out with a bang here at the Sphere for our final episode. But we do appreciate everyone who's listened to us. Maybe if it was your first year or you found us late, whatever. No matter who, we do appreciate you listening, interacting with us on Twitter, all that stuff. We appreciate it. We appreciate anyone who's rated, reviewed, and subscribed. That stuff does help us. It makes our producer, Matt Mitchell, quite happy when he sees a new review. Somebody referred to us as the Sisyphus of hockey betting, which I really appreciated, because that's how hockey betting is just generally. But yeah, Nick, Tim, anything to add here as we close out another season of Line Change?
No, good season, fellas, and thanks for joining us this year, Tim. That was a huge addition to the group, and thanks to all the listeners.
Tim was like the Kyle Okposo of Line Change.
Yes, I thought I was getting the cup second. Didn't happen. I still went to Nick. Didn't think that was entirely fair.
Don't even bring up the cup order right now, Tim.
No, I just want to say thank you to you guys for welcoming me in with open arms. This is by far my favorite thing I do here at this show. It's a great environment. I've learned so much from you guys. It forces me to watch even more hockey, which probably, I guess, isn't quite good for my health. But to just talk the pucks every day with you guys is seriously the best part of my day, and I enjoy doing it, and I'll miss doing it in the off season.
Yeah, and it was a pleasure to work with both of you guys this year. We'll be back on the other side of the off season. We'll do our preview episodes. If there's anything worth noting, getting together for over the summer, we will definitely do that. But I wouldn't count on it. So yeah, that'll do it. Make sure to check out all the other Action Network podcasts. In the meantime, Payoff Pitch for baseball. We've been doing a lot of stuff at Wonder Goal for Copa America and Euro 2024. The Golf Pod. If you like the NFL for some reason, I'm sure that stuff has never stopped. So you can go listen to that.
And Liebov's on fire in the Euros and Copa, by the way, right? Romania,
yeah, we're having a blast over there.
So.
But yeah, thank you very much. We will see you again in the fall.